Hello everybody, welcome back to Screen Stars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the 2021 documentary Sir Alex Ferguson, Never Give In. A film that is directed by Jason Ferguson, who is his son. Obviously, we get many people making an appearance here, as well as obviously Sir Alex Ferguson, Eric Cantona, Ryan Giggs, Gordon Strachan, as well as his family, talking in depth about the great man himself. Now, I fairly recently, only a week or so ago, gave a review for the other Man United documentary that came out recently, The United Way. Now, my main criticism of that documentary, as good as it was the fact that there was no Alex Ferguson being interviewed on it. He didn't comment at all on that documentary, which was a real letdown. But I also did comment on that review that I suspect the reason was that it was making this documentary. So I stand by that, really. Now, what do you get here with this documentary? Well, as you would expect. Well, actually, it started a little bit unexpectedly to me. I thought they were just going to go straight in, boom, start talking about his football and things like that. And actually, no. The first thing they addressed on this documentary, really, one of the first things was his injury. Was it 2018? When he had his brain bleed, things like that, and he was very, very ill. So they talked about that. They even talked about, some doctors spoke about what he went through. He spoke in depth about what it felt like, what he went through. His family spoke about it. Even as far as for him to, read some of the things he wrote, because he was terrified he was going to lose his memories and things like this, and his sharp brain and that sort of thing. And it was actually a really impactful start to the documentary, and I didn't expect it. And then it went on to his early years, his time as a player in Scotland, how he fell out of love with the game, how he was essentially booted out of Rangers for a bad game sort of thing. Then it went on to his time as a manager in Scotland at Aberdeen, and the success that he had with Aberdeen, which was really, really cool to watch. And then obviously it focused very heavily on when he came down to Manchester United to take over from Ron Atkinson. And what I liked as well about this documentary is it didn't hold back, really. It focused very heavily on his early years at Manchester United and how difficult it was and how close he was to losing his job. To the point where he even talked about, and his wife spoke about, he was getting phone calls and threats from Man United fans telling him to F off back to Scotland and all this kind of stuff. And you forget all that because he was so successful. You forget about them earlier sometimes and just how difficult it was for him. Especially after what he did at Aberdeen. Great things were expected of him when he came to Manchester United immediately, and he just didn't turn out like that. And it made me reflect as well on modern day football. The fact that he was given this time to settle, build his team, and look where it took Manchester United. And these days managers aren't given the luxury of time, which is a real shame. So yeah, that was really good, and it focused very heavily on the 1990 FA Cup final, how when he dropped Jim Leighton for Les Sealey, and the controversy behind that, and he spoke at length about why he did it and the consequences of that, which was really interesting. And then obviously it moved on to him signing Eric Cantona in the early 90s and how that took Manchester United to the next level. And Eric Cantona did make an appearance and was interviewed, which I thought was really nice. Ryan Giggs spoke at length as well in regards to that period of time at Manchester United, and there were some funny stories as well. Ryan Giggs was saying about he was at functions, he would get told off by the boss for having his top button open on his shirt. But then Eric Cantona would turn up in a white flannelette suit and red Adidas trainers, and the boss, Sir Alex, wouldn't say a thing to him, sort of thing, because he knew. And this was another thing that the documentary was, pretty strong on. He knew exactly how to deal with players and how certain players needed to be handled differently. And that was a great insight as well to this, because he did talk like about the psychology of the game and how important it is to remind players of where they came from, you know, working class backgrounds of their families and things like that, as he did, you know, from the shipyards in Scotland. And he always, you know, embedded that into his players and teams, that you're not playing for you, you're playing for the fans and your families, you know, your grandparents who working class, came from nowhere, you know, worked long hours in the week sort of thing. Just remember where you came from. And he was very, very strong on that really throughout the whole documentary. I have to say, I thought it was a brilliant, brilliant documentary. I don't think I've ever obviously I don't, well, you may not know, but I am a Manchester United fan. And obviously I've seen him interviewed many, many times over the years, Sir Alex Ferguson. This felt different, you know what I mean, because it was his son directing it, and it was probably his son that was doing the interviewing with him. He was more at ease, he was more open. When he asked him to be honest, he was brutally honest. He didn't, like sometimes when they do press conferences, managers, they'll just, you know, there's an agenda for them, whereas he was very open in the interview, very honest while he was being interviewed. And the film kind of climaxed, you know, with him coming back after his brain bleed and going back to Old Trafford and how nervous he was and all this kind of stuff. It was just really, really lovely. I would have liked, I'm going to be honest here, I would have liked them to have focused a little bit more after the treble. It focused very heavily on his career at Man United up to the treble, not so much after that. And I would have liked to have heard him talk about coaching people like Cristiano Ronaldo and Wayne Rooney and Rio Ferdinand and others like that. But unfortunately we didn't get that. It was a bit like the other one, the United way. Once the treble, you know, that's it. They didn't really talk about anything. And it's sad really, because he won so many more trophies after that treble winning season. And that seems to be, like, for everybody, the pinnacle. I understand that. No one's ever done it before, and probably no one's ever going to do it again, a treble like that. But he won a lot more trophies, and he worked with some incredibly talented players after the treble. So I would have liked it to have spent another 15 minutes or so maybe talking about those years after the treble, but unfortunately it didn't. But I'm saying that it was still a brilliant documentary. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. If you're a Man United fan, it's an absolute must. If you're a fan of sports and football, you must respect Alex Ferguson. I don't see how you couldn't. So for that reason, it may well be worth a watch as well. So yeah, 9 out of 10 from me. Very, very good indeed. So yeah, that's my review for Sir Alex Ferguson, Never Give In. Check it out. I will be back, obviously, with plenty more content on the channel very, very soon.